The kitchen was silent, except for the soft clink of a spoon against porcelain as Grace Bennett prepared her morning tea. At 28, she'd been working as a nanny for the Patterson family for just over a year, caring for 7-year-old Sophie while her father, Thomas Patterson, ran his investment firm downtown. Grace glanced at the clock. 6:15 a.m. Mr. Patterson would be down any minute, moving through his precise morning routine. Coffee, financial news on his tablet. Out the door by 6:45. Sophie wouldn't wake for another hour, giving Grace time to prepare breakfast and pack the lunch that Mr. Patterson never remembered he needed. She looked down at the envelope in her hand, the one she'd been carrying in her apron pocket all week. Today was her birthday, her 29th. To be exact, but she hadn't mentioned it to anyone. Who would she tell? Her parents had passed away 3 years ago, and she had no siblings. Her few friends from college had scattered across the country, their yearly birthday texts growing more sporadic with each passing year. The card was one she'd bought for herself at the drugstore, something she'd started doing after her mother died. It felt less lonely somehow to have at least one birthday card, even if she'd written her own name on the envelope. She set it on the kitchen island, propping it against the fruit bowl, then immediately felt foolish. What was she doing? Mr. Patterson wouldn't notice, and if he did, he'd probably think it odd that she was displaying her own birthday card like some sad reminder of her solitary life. Grace reached to take it back, but footsteps on the stairs stopped her. She quickly moved to the coffee maker instead, pressing the button just as Thomas Patterson entered the kitchen. At 41, Thomas carried himself with the controlled precision of a man who'd built success through discipline and focus. His dark hair was slightly gray at the temples, his light blue shirt crisp even at this early hour. He'd been a widower for 3 years, since his wife Rebecca had died in a car accident, and in that time, he'd become even more reserved, more isolated. "Good morning, Mr. Patterson," Grace said, as she did every morning. "Morning, Grace." He picked up his tablet from the counter, already scrolling through overnight market reports. Grace poured his coffee, added the single sugar he preferred, and set it beside him. Then she retreated to prepare Sophie's breakfast, hoping he wouldn't notice the card. But Thomas did notice. His eyes caught on the envelope propped against the fruit bowl, seeing Grace's name written in what he recognized as her own handwriting. He'd seen her grocery lists and notes to Sophie often enough. He stared at it for a long moment, a strange feeling settling in his chest. She'd written herself a birthday card. The implication of that simple action struck him with unexpected force. How alone must someone be to buy and write their own birthday card? Thomas realized, with uncomfortable clarity, that he knew almost nothing about Grace beyond her excellent care of Sophie. He didn't know if she had family, friends, any life at all outside this house. He paid her well, gave her weekends off, but had never asked about her as a person. He looked over at her now, standing at the stove preparing Sophie's oatmeal with the same quiet efficiency she brought to everything. She wore a simple red top and a white apron, her blonde hair pulled back in a loose ponytail. There was something melancholy in her posture this morning, a heaviness he'd never noticed before. "Grace?" She turned, slightly startled. He rarely initiated conversation beyond logistics. "Yes, Mr. Patterson? Is it your birthday today?" Color rose in her cheeks. "Oh, that... I'm sorry, I shouldn't have left that out. I was just..." She moved toward the island to take the card away. "Don't," Thomas said, surprising himself. I wanted to wish you a happy birthday." Grace stopped, her hand hovering over the card. "Thank you." "That's kind of you." An awkward silence settled between them. Thomas felt he should say more, but what? He wasn't good at this kind of thing. Hadn't been even before Rebecca died. And after, he'd let his emotional muscles atrophy from disuse. "Do you have plans?" he asked finally. "For your birthday?" "Oh no, nothing special. I'll probably just read, maybe take a walk." The loneliness of that simple answer hit Thomas harder than he expected. He thought of his own birthdays since Rebecca died. Sophie trying her best to make them special with hand-drawn cards and off-key singing, while he went through the motions, feeling the absence of his wife like a physical wound. "How old are you turning?" The question came out before he could stop it, before he could second-guess whether it was appropriate. 29. 29. So young, really, to have that kind of loneliness in her eyes? Thomas made a decision that surprised him. Take the day off. Paid, of course. I'll work from home today and look after Sophie. Grace's eyes widened. Mr. Patterson, that's not necessary. I'm perfectly happy to work. I insist. Everyone should do something special on their birthday. He paused, then added more quietly. Even if it's just having the day to themselves. Grace looked at him for a long moment, and Thomas had the strange sense that she was seeing him clearly for the first time, seeing past the reserved exterior to something underneath. Thank you, she said softly. That's very thoughtful. After Grace left, Thomas found himself picking up the card she'd forgotten on the counter. He opened it before he could think better of it. Inside, in her neat handwriting, she'd written, Happy birthday, Grace. Here's to another year of holding on to hope. You're stronger than you know. Thomas set the card down carefully, feeling something crack open in his chest. She'd written herself encouragement, a little pep talk to get through another birthday alone. The bravery and sadness of that gesture undid something in him. When Sophie came downstairs and learned that Grace had the day off for her birthday, she was immediately concerned. But Daddy, she'll be all alone! That's sad. Out of the mouths of children came uncomfortable truths. Yes, Thomas admitted. It is sad. We should do something nice for her, Sophie declared with the certainty of a 7-year-old who believed in fixing things. Like how Grace always does nice things for us. Thomas thought about that. Grace did do nice things for them constantly. She remembered Sophie's favorite foods, left encouraging notes in her lunchbox, stayed late when Thomas got caught in meetings. She'd organized Sophie's birthday party last month, baking a cake from scratch and playing games with a dozen overexcited children without complaint. What had he ever done for her beyond sign her paycheck? You're right, Thomas said slowly. We should. By the time Grace returned the next morning, she found the kitchen transformed. A small cake sat on the island, clearly store-bought but decorated with careful effort. Balloons were tied to the chair where she usually ate her breakfast, and beside her coffee cup was a card. This one with Sophie's crayon drawing on the front and Happy Birthday, Grace, written in uneven letters. Grace felt tears spring to her eyes as she opened it. Inside, Sophie had drawn a picture of the three of them together, with hearts and flowers all around. Below, in Thomas's neat handwriting, was a message. Thank you for bringing light into our home. You're valued more than you know. Thomas and Sophie. Thomas entered the kitchen to find Grace wiping her eyes, the card clutched in her hand. We wanted to do something for you, he said, feeling suddenly awkward. Sophie and we realized we'd never properly thanked you for everything you do. This is, Grace's voice caught. This is the kindest thing anyone has done for me in a very long time. That shouldn't be true, Thomas said quietly. Someone as caring as you should be surrounded by people who appreciate you. Grace met his eyes, and something passed between them. Recognition, perhaps of shared loneliness, of understanding what it meant to go through life feeling invisible. The cake is probably terrible, Thomas admitted. I haven't baked since, well, in a long time, and Sophie's decorating is enthusiastic but imprecise. Grace laughed, the sound brightening the kitchen. I'm sure it's perfect. That evening, after Sophie was in bed, Thomas found Grace reading in the small sitting room off the kitchen, the one he'd told her she could use as her own space. Grace, can I talk to you for a minute? She looked up, surprised. Of course. Thomas sat in the chair across from her, feeling uncharacteristically nervous. I wanted to apologize. I've been a terrible employer, not in the practical sense, but in the human sense. I've treated you like you're invisible, like you only exist in relation to Sophie and my schedule. I didn't even know it was your birthday. I didn't know you have no family. Mr. Patterson, you don't need to— Thomas, he interrupted. Please call me Thomas. And I do need to say this. When I saw that card you'd written yourself, it made me realize how isolated I've been, how I've let that isolation affect everyone around me. I've been so focused on just getting through each day since Rebecca died that I've forgotten how to connect with people. Grace set down her book, giving him her full attention. Grief does that sometimes. It builds walls to protect us from more hurt. You understand that? Thomas said. It wasn't a question. Yes, when my parents died, car accident. 3 years ago, I felt like I'd lost my place in the world. They were all the family I had. After the funeral, I just felt untethered, like I was floating through life with nothing to hold on to. Is that why you became a nanny? To have a family even if it wasn't your own? Grace considered this. Partly, I suppose. I like children, and I'm good with them. But yes, being part of a family again, even at the edges of one, it helps. It makes life feel less empty. Thomas thought about his own emptiness. How he'd been going through the motions for 3 years, focused on work and basic parenting duties, but not really living. We're a pair, aren't we? Two lonely people sharing a house but barely seeing each other. I see you, Grace said softly. I've always seen you. I see how hard you work to give Sophie a good life. I see how you read her the bedtime stories even when you're exhausted. I see you trying to be both parents to her, to fill an impossible void. The understanding in her voice nearly undid Thomas. When was the last time someone had really seen him, acknowledged his struggles? And I see you now, he said. I should have seen you before. Will you forgive me for taking so long? Grace smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes. There's nothing to forgive. But maybe we could start over? Actually get to know each other? Over the following weeks, something shifted in the Patterson household. Thomas started coming home earlier, sharing dinner with Grace and Sophie instead of eating alone in his office. They talked, really talked, about books and music, about their lives before loss had marked them. Thomas learned that Grace had studied literature in college, that she dreamed of writing children's books someday. Grace learned that Thomas had wanted to be an architect before practical concerns, had pushed him toward finance. Sophie, delighted by the change, bloomed under the attention of two adults who were finally present and engaged. The house, which had felt like a mausoleum for 3 years, began to feel like a home. One Saturday evening, 2 months after Grace's birthday, Thomas found himself cooking dinner while Grace helped Sophie with a school project at the kitchen island. It was a domestic scene, comfortable and warm, and Thomas realized with a start that he was happy, actually genuinely happy, for the first time in 3 years. Later, after Sophie was asleep, Thomas and Grace sat on the back porch with tea, listening to the evening sounds of the neighborhood. Can I tell you something? Grace asked quietly. Of course. That birthday, when I left that card out, I'd been thinking about quitting. Not because of you or Sophie, but because it was too hard. Being around a family, but not really part of it. I felt like a ghost haunting someone else's life. Thomas felt his chest tighten. I'm glad you didn't. Quit, I mean. Me too, because something changed that day. You saw me. Really saw me. And that mattered more than you know. Thomas set down his tea, turning to face her fully. I need to be honest with you about something. Somewhere along the way, my feelings have become more than gratitude or friendship. I care about you, Grace. Not just as Sophie's nanny or even as a friend. As a person I want in my life permanently. Grace's eyes filled with emotion. Thomas, I know the situation is complicated, he continued quickly. You work for me, there's an age difference. People might judge. If you don't feel the same way, we can forget I said anything and just remain friends. But I couldn't not tell you. You've brought light back into my life, into Sophie's life. You've reminded me what it means to connect with someone, to care again. Grace reached out and took his hand. I feel the same way. I have for a while now. But I didn't think, I'm just the nanny. You're not just anything, Thomas said firmly. You're extraordinary. You're kind and patient and brilliant. Sophie adores you. He paused, then said it clearly. I love you. Grace's tears spilled over. I love you too. Their first kiss was gentle, tentative, two wounded people learning to trust again. But beneath the hesitance was something solid, something real built on friendship and understanding. The next morning, they sat Sophie down together. Thomas had worried about how to explain the change in their relationship. But Sophie, with the wisdom children sometimes possess, simply said, Does this mean Grace is staying forever? If she wants to, Thomas said, looking at Grace. I want to, Grace confirmed, and Sophie threw her arms around them both. The transition wasn't without challenges. Thomas insisted Grace stop working as Sophie's nanny immediately. You're part of this family now, not an employee. Grace enrolled in an online writing program, starting work on the children's books she'd dreamed about. Thomas made space in his life for more than just work. Attending school events with Grace, taking real weekends off, they married quietly a year later, with Sophie as their flower girl, and a small group of Thomases, friends who'd watched his transformation with amazement. At the reception, Sophie gave a speech that made everyone cry, about how Grace had taught them all about love and second chances. Years later, when Grace published her first children's book, a story about a lonely girl who finds a family, she dedicated it to Thomas and Sophie. But she also kept that first birthday card, the one she'd written to herself, as a reminder of where she'd been and how far she'd come. Thomas kept it too in his desk drawer at work. On difficult days, he'd take it out and read her words. "Here's to another year of holding on to hope." It reminded him of the gift she'd given him without even knowing it, the courage to hope again, to open his heart, to believe that after loss could come love. Because sometimes the most profound changes begin with the smallest gestures. A card left on a counter, a moment of genuine seeing, a decision to care about someone's loneliness instead of looking away. Grace had been wrong when she'd written that card to herself. She wasn't alone in her strength. She'd found people who would be strong with her, who would face life's challenges beside her, who would make sure she never had to write herself. Another lonely birthday card again. And Thomas had learned that walls built to protect us from pain also keep out joy. That grief, while valid and necessary, shouldn't become a permanent state. That sometimes the people we barely notice are the ones who can change our lives completely if we're brave enough to see them. On Grace's 30th birthday, she woke to find the kitchen filled with balloons, a homemade cake, much improved from Thomas's first attempt, and cards from Thomas and Sophie expressing their love. But the best gift was simply being there, in that warm kitchen with her family around her. No more cards written to herself in lonely drugstore aisles. No more birthdays spent alone. Just love, freely given and gratefully received, in a home that had found its light again. And it had all started with a single card, a moment of recognition, and two lonely hearts brave enough to hope for something better.